Once we hear that, we know that we'll be on. Good evening to you. Welcome to the platform of the National Religious Partnership Media and Radio, on YouTube and Facebook as well. It is Thursday evening. At this time of the evening, here we are with you as we come to you to do a post-mortem of the recently run local government elections 2024. We're grateful that you have joined us, and we look forward to a very fulsome discussion, fruitful one as well, as we look back at what was and what is.
Good evening to our listeners. I am your host, Anne-Marie Bishop, and joining me this evening to examine the post-mortem of our local government election, we have in studio Mr. Gladstone Brown, Director of Elections in the Office of the Electoral Office of Jamaica. We have Mr. Sidney Henry, my co-host this evening, and he is the Director of Village Initiative Foundation and Village Academy in Monique in the parish of St. Anne. We're also joined by no stranger, as she had joined us on Tuesday, Brenda Ramsey, former Mayor of Mandeville and former Council of the Belfield Division in the parish of Manchester. We also have Mr. Leon Nash, Communications Officer of NRP Media. Welcome to all who are online on our social media page, YouTube and Facebook, as we seek to look at what has transpired in the local government election, what is the upsets, and what we are to expect going forward. I will now invite the Director of Elections, Mr. Brown, to share with us the updated results of Tuesday's local government election. Go ahead, Mr. Brown. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Just update where we are. At about an hour ago, we had completed counting 226 divisions of the 228. So we just have two more divisions to go, one in Westmoreland, which is the Cornwall Mount Division, and we're still completing the Dallas Division in East Rural St. Andrew. So we are pretty much near the end. We intend to complete the count tonight. We still the other outstanding one will be the Miral municipality in Portmore. That we are also counting, and we intend to go as far as we possibly can on that one tonight. So we should be completing the counts. We should be completing the count for the 228 divisions, and we'll be releasing those final figures tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown. Based on the 226 division count, can you advise, are you at liberty to share at this time who is in the lead and what is the margin of the lead?
Depends on what we mean by in the lead.
Which party has the most, which party is ahead in terms of the division count thus far? Of the 220. Sorry, you seem to be muted, Mr. Yes, Brown.
The People's National Party has about 115, I think, and the Jamaica Labour Party 111. I think that's it. That's the count I have. In terms of control or of the different parish council, the different parish council, municipalities, that is. I think the JLP has 7 and the PMP is trending to about 6 for the time being, excluding the Portmore municipality, which we are waiting to get that complete.
Thank you so much. Based on what you have already, has any division indicated or any particular party or candidate indicate their intention for magisterial recount?
I've heard from 2 of my returning officers who have indicated that indication was made to them or that there might be a challenge. I think one in St. Thomas and a possible one in St. Catherine. But I'm yet to see anything official yet. Just an indication to our returning officer that that might happen.
Thank you for that information. How was it?
Leon Nash here.
Go ahead, Mr. Nash.
Right. So, Mr. Brown, thank you very much for joining us on the discussion or the post-mortem of the elections. How would you view the whole aspect of the running of the elections from the Electoral Office of Jamaica's point of view? How was it for you in terms of how it was managed?
We think we did a fairly good job of it. The normal election, the hitches would have surfaced again, but these are not major glitches or hitches. They were more centered on persons indicating that they have difficulty finding where they are supposed to be voting, and some persons are contending that their name was not on the list, even though they should be on a list, etc. But in the main, though, those concerns that was brought to our attention, we sought to quickly address those. There was one major incident that impacted on us in St. James, in the sense that there was a shooting incident at I think it was the Flankers Primary School, and that impacted on the delay. We had to shut down the voting operation there for about an hour, I think. But however, we were able to start back late in the afternoon. So in the main, I think we had a fairly smooth election. We are, again, we're gonna do some post-mortem in terms of a post-election evaluation that we're gonna take to see where we fell down, if we did fall down, or some of the issues that came to the fore, and see how best we address those going forward.
There's some talk about how the entire election itself was run by the EOJ, indicating in some spheres of the country that this is one of the longest vote count or recount or official count, if you may, that it would have taken for an election result to be known. How do you respond to that?
No, I think people don't. I think that comment is based on individuals who are not aware of the history.
Mm-hmm.
There has never been any election that the final count was ever completed in 24 hours. There are two processes. I think individuals are confusing the process. There are two processes. The one is known as a preliminary count. What happened on Monday night the result was based on a preliminary count. Whenever at the close of poll at 5 p.m. on Monday afternoon, the presiding officer, the poll clerk, and the indoor agents would then do the calculation, count the ballots within the polling station. And then the supervisor, EOJ supervisor, would then transport those ballot boxes to the counting center. When it reaches the counting center, the returning officer would then just write off the numbers from the box and then collate or tabulate the scores from the different polling stations and then release a figure. That figure is what is known as a preliminary count. by law, there's another phase, and which persons don't seem to understand. There's another phase, which is called the final count, where we started on Tuesday morning. And then they would have gone through, what happened on Tuesday morning is that the returning officer, along with the candidate or the various candidates and their agent, and in most cases, they would come with a battery of lawyers and then start the count. What they would do, they open the box on Tuesday morning, go through, look at the documentation in the box, the poll books, to ensure that the unused ballots were there and everything is intact. And then they start the process of counting. That process of counting, which is in the final count stage, is that they will look at each individual ballot. At times it takes a long time because everybody is now looking to see whether that the X was marked properly, whether that there any little mark that would either validate the ballot or seek to get it rejected. And it takes some time. Sometimes unknowing to the public. There are times it'll take sometimes even 10 minutes to scrutinize one ballot and haggle over and argue about it, etc. So that phase takes some time. So therefore, it's somewhat unfair to say that the process have never been so like this. I can tell you in 2016, it took about 4 or 5 days to complete not 2016, 2016, it took about 4 or 5 days for the process to be completed.
Yes, that was the latest. Yes, that was the latest there.
Yeah, that was 2016 when you had that 1 seat majority. At the time for the party that wanted and it took quite a while. So for the public to say, if you don't do the process taking long, we are able to do it within less than 72 hours to do the final count. And the final count is by law, and the law dictates what ought to be done in the final count. We're not going to reduce or resign from carrying out what the law says just by expediency.
Yes.
And therefore, we prefer to do the necessary checks and balance, have the necessary review and the necessary scrutiny of the ballots and the process, so as to ensure that at the end of the day, everything is correct.
Indeed, and in terms of your preparation towards this particular activity of 2024 in the local government elections, you would have had to take in more staff. Bear in mind the possibility of what happened now. You had that additional staff to assist you, or you depended on the same numbers that you would use that you used in 2016.
No, we use a little bit less than more than what we used in 2016, but we use less than what we used in 2020, because 2020 was a sort of unique year, and it says, remember, it was a COVID. We're in the height of COVID. And then we had to brought in persons to deal with sanitization, etc., etc. That aspect of it. But because COVID is not as rampant as it is now, we brought in less staff. Suffice to say, the operation required of us to utilize approximately in excess of 30,000 persons for us to complete this exercise. So the large operation that we have to we undertook. Because bear in mind, we have to prepare with the possibility that the turnout could be 100%. We don't have the luxury of preparing less or assume that it will only be a certain percent and the percentage in terms of turnout, and therefore we prepare that. No, our preparation is based on the assumption that the turnout will be 100%. Because you can't prepare and then unknowingly 100% come turn out, and then you'll have a ballot or so to give to the person. Then you'll be in another problem.
Yes. So by all estimates, you were fully prepared, and there's no difficulty in you saying that you did all that you needed to do to ensure that you had a good election and that it was properly managed.
Yes, that's our position. Yes.
Okay. Madam Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. In terms of the turnout in 2016 and as opposed to 2020 and on Monday, can you say whether we had a much more turnout at the last local government election on Monday as opposed to the other two previous local government elections, or was it less?
No, in 2016, as a percentage, the turnout in that election then was 30.06. The turnout in this one is 29.6.
Would you want to comment as to the reason for the approximately 1% or so lower turnout in this local government election?
I'm not sure. I don't think we have done that analysis as to why persons have not turned out, or the voter turnout was less. We have not done that analysis yet.
In terms of the persons who are eligible and who have registered to vote, would you say it is a low turnout overall based on those who are able to vote?
Well, the percentage will reflect that, but I think one has to be somewhat cautious in the sense that the base that you work that percentage, because the percentage is based on actual vote over what individuals who are registered.
Yes, registered.
So
yeah.
right, so the base to a certain extent might be overinflated in the sense that a number of persons are on the list who have migrated since they got registered, and there may be a few of them that have died. So you're using a base that from my personal view is that it might be inflated, and therefore it could distort the actual turnout in the sense that so we might need to really look at doing a new enumeration exercise to actually come up with a list that reflects those individuals who still reside in Jamaica, those individuals who want to be a part of the process, and then so that might give us a better picture than what exists now. Because, as I said earlier on, it seemed to be somewhat inflated in the sense that a number of persons have migrated, etc. And by those individuals who have migrated, by law, we don't have that authority to remove them from the list.
We understand. In terms, how often is the numeration exercise carried out? Every
Yes.
2 years, every 3 years?
Well, we have not had one for a while, but remember, our process now is a continuous registration process. Then you can get registered any day that you want to get registered. So we have a continuous registration process, but that continuous registration process means that you continually add into the number.
But do
we
you
have not
remove, in terms of removing persons who may be deceased, so how often is the list updated in that regard? Not in terms of the addition for in terms of persons who are registered, but in terms of persons who are deceased and should be taken off the list by.
We do that regularly. In fact, we update our list and republish our list every 6 months. So we do remove individuals, whether or not we have different options or different source of getting the data. Although in terms of persons who have died, so the list is published twice per year.
Thank you for that information. What would cause a ballot to be invalid? Because you mentioned that it can take time, and we appreciate you sharing with the public, educating the public as to the process that is involved. You mentioned the preliminary count and the final count. We appreciate that information. But what would cause a ballot to be invalid?
Well, there are a number of things. It should be done in privacy, in the sense that you should not mark a ballot that sends a message. In other words, the law requires you to mark an X beside your preferred candidate, and therefore, if you come and put a tick, that can render the ballot invalid. The law requires you to mark that X with a pencil, not with a pen, and if it requires you not to send a message in the sense that it ought to be secret. So if a person comes and writes put 200, it can mean that you're sending a message to somebody that indicating to them that, yes, see my ballot here, I voted. Things like those will render the ballot has been invalid.
For an individual who has never voted, what do you provide the pens at the location and are instructions given, whether verbally or in writing, at the various polling stations?
Yes, you have their signs there, but when you enter that polling station, your first interaction would be with the presiding officer. The presiding officer is the one who give you all the information, give you all the instructions. And then, as you asked about pencil, every voting booth, every polling station have a voting booth, and every voting booth have a pencil attached to it.
How does the electoral office facilitate persons who are visually impaired
All right,
to participate in the voting process?
Right, the law allows for the person who's visually impaired to seek assistance. They can seek the assistance of the presiding officer or from a friend. So from the presiding officer, he or she would indicate to the presiding officer that he want him or her to mark the ballot on his behalf. In terms of what he has to so disclose it in public, in front of the scrutineers and everybody else within that polling station. In terms of the person, if he's accompanied by his friend, the friend will be required to take an oath, and then the necessary ballot will be given. The friend and the person who has that disability would then go behind the voting booth, and I guess and the person with disability will issue certain instruction to his friend, and the friend will mark based on the instruction that he got from the person who is the voter, and then do necessary marking on the ballot, and then return with the ballot to the presiding officer to complete the process.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, let me pause to welcome Mr. Sheldon Hanson. Mr. Hanson? I'm going to ask if any of our other panelists have any questions for you, Mr. Brown.
Good evening, Madam Bishop.
Good.
And our panelists.
Yes. We have Mr. Gladstone Brown. He's the Director of Elections at the Office of the Electoral Office of Jamaica. To our panelists, anyone, any
Madam Bishop.
for Mr. Brown?
Yes, good evening.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Henry.
Good evening, Sir Brown. I
Good
think
evening,
we need to express our appreciation to our public servants who extend themselves, particularly with regard to the process that supports the democracy that we enjoy in our country. I wondered if your office, I mean, you say one of the things that could describe the level of participation of the citizens could be those, a list that may have persons who have migrated, who are not here, and so on. But there's also the extent to which there's a level of apathy among the people. Is there a role, is there a place, I'm wondering, for your office, maybe in collaboration with, other agents to facilitate what could be greater political awareness, political literacy, a sense of civic responsibility with regard to this opportunity? Is there that kind of role of support that your office can engage in or can be a part of that would boost the response of the numbers of persons who participate?
But could our mandate, mandate as per the ECJ interim act is to manage and execute elections. Certainly in terms of question in terms of what could we do to allow other persons or to encourage other persons. Yes, we do. From time to time, we collaborate with other entities to so educate persons. What we have been doing in recent times, certainly from our end, is to go into the schools to undertake their school elections. So as to begin to expose students or individuals at that level to the process. Certainly, in doing so, there's normally a session that we provide some sort of lecturing to the students in terms of the pros and the cons and the positives as to why you should be a part of the process. So we have been playing our part. We'd have a problem to expand that role, but I don't know if we'll be able to take on that role ourselves. But certainly we are prepared, and when any opportunity that comes our way to so educate the wider public in terms of the positive of being a part of the voting process, we are certainly willing to do so.
Okay.
So I suspect that Mr. Brown was treating with the whole matter of what we could do in terms of public education to improve the numbers. Is that the question that you were asking?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very well. You did. All right. Just want to let our listeners know and viewers know that we are coming to you live on the platform of the National Religious Partnership Media and Radio. And we are also on Facebook and YouTube at NRP Media JA. We do appreciate your time, and we thank you so much for coming on board to share with this post-mortem of the local government elections. In studio, my name is Leon Nash, and they call me the original Blessed Man. And the host of this particular section, though, is our attorney, Anne-Marie Bishop, and the team. We're going to take a quick break, and we come right back. We thank you so much, Mr. Glasspool Brown, for coming on and staying with us. And we do appreciate your time. I'm sure if you so desire to stick around, there might be some other questions that you might need to answer for us. So until then, let's take this quick break and come right back with you on this station. It is the local government election, and it is the post-mortem that NRP is having at this time. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hepburn's Glass Supplies is the latest trend-setting supplier of glass and mirrors in the industry. We specialize in tinted and clear glasses, as well as mirrors for all your windows, doors, and closets at very competitive prices. To maximize your shopping experience, we stock 316 and 1/8 mirror thickness and 316 and quarter thickness in our entire stock of float glasses. We have in stock gloves.
All right. Okay. I'm hearing the order that you're not hearing from your end. So let's do this one more.
Can you hear me? I have to leave though. I'm another group into
You have another engagement. Thank you very much, Mr. Glasspool Brown.
Anytime. Good. Have
right.
a good afternoon, everybody.
Yes,
have a good afternoon, everybody. Good.
Good afternoon.
All right. Thank you so much.
you.
All right. So let's go back to that commercial break, and we will be back with the panel and the host in just a moment. So let's go back to Hepburn's Glass. And want to let you know that tonight's broadcast as well comes to you courtesy of VW Investments and TG's Auto Supplies. They are located in Spaldings. And for VW Investments, they are also over there in Christiana in Manchester, Jamaica. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hepburn's Glass Supplies is the latest trend-setting supplier of glass and mirrors in the industry. We specialize in tinted and clear glasses, as well as mirrors for all your windows, doors, and closets at very competitive prices. To maximize your shopping experience, we stock 316 and 1/8 mirror thickness and 316 and quarter thickness in our entire stock of float glasses. We have in stock gloves, cutters, and suction cups at unbeatable prices. Our customer service is second to none, with same-day cutting for your specific measurements. Visit our office at 13 Chisholm Avenue, Kingston 13. Call us at 908-0962 or email hepburn.glass@gmail.com. Hepburn's Glass. Quality service is our priority.
All right, stay with us, stay with us, stay with us. We are on the post-mortem examination of the recent local government election. Let's do it like this. And so we're back with you on this station. It's 25 minutes after the hour of 8 o'clock. Let me bring back into the Zoom room our host, none other than attorney at law, Anne-Marie Bishop, and the team. Anne-Marie, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Nash. I appreciate it. Welcome again to all our listeners on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. We appreciate you joining us as we have our post-election evaluation of Jamaica's local government election. My co-hosts are Sheldon Hanson and Mr. Sidney Henry. We have been joined by former mayor of Mandeville and former councillor of the Belfield Division in Manchester, Miss Brenda Ramsey. We also have on set Miss Heather, let me get her name right, forgive me.
I think we lost her.
I think we lost her.
Right.
And earlier, minutes ago, we had the Director of Elections in the Office of the Electoral Office of Jamaica, Mr. Gladspole Brown, and he shared with us some results. He advised that of the 228 divisions, the count so far was up to 226, with only 2 more divisions to go. He also shared that currently preliminary results indicate 115 divisions to the PMP with 111 to the JLP. However, the JLP so far in terms of parish council seats, 7 to the JLP and 6 to the PMP, with 1 St. Thomas not fully declared and St. Catherine. So hopefully all the counts will be completed, hopefully by tomorrow the latest, and the country will be given an official update. Welcome, Miss Brenda.
Thank you very much. And thanks to you all for inviting me to be here. Mr. Lash is getting me into trouble because I have an engagement, but let's see what I can do and how long I can stay with you.
Well,
yeah.
We appreciate you coming, and we ask that you weigh in on the discussion. You heard Mr. Brown shared with us the percentage, and he indicated that in 2016, it was about 30.06% in terms of voter turnout, and it was a little less for this year, but he wasn't able to say the reason for the difference. It wasn't a big margin in any event.
Yeah.
And he did a brief education for us in terms of the process, in terms of the preliminary count, and he took us through the whole process of the presiding office and what one is to expect at a polling station. And then he moved into the final count, which we appreciate that, and we appreciate the public education, of our electoral process.
Right.
When you were on a few days ago, you spoke about the decentralization of the parish council from central government.
Right.
And you also spoke about entrenchment. I will invite you to just share with us briefly your take on the current status of the election that took place a few days ago, what you have seen, the changes and the upsets, the victories, so to speak, within various parishes across the island. We see where, based on preliminary report, all these seats are subject to, not all, but a few may be subject to challenge. We see where in Hanover, for example, all the divisions were taken by the People's National Party. In St. Catherine, the People's National Party is 3 divisions more than the JLP. In Manchester, the People's National Party had 12 over the JLP 3. And likewise, in some parishes, the JLP was ahead. For example, in St. Thomas, they were ahead of the PMP by 2 divisions and by 5 divisions in Portland and 6 divisions in St. Anne. So they got 11 in St. Anne to the PMP 5. and 9 in St. Elizabeth to the PMP 6. Can you, as a former councillor, can you just share with us your take on the election, the local government election?
Election. The glorious uncertainty of that process.
Indeed.
But for me, it was one of the most enjoyable elections that I have been through. There were prizes and surprises on both sides.
Indeed.
It says a lot for the maturity of our voters and the Jamaican populace. What I am seeing and feeling is that on the ground, and certainly I can only speak definitively to Manchester because this is where I have been engaged, is that there was a lot of energy this time coming from two things, I think. One, we had a lot of younger candidates, and so they were able to pull younger voters, and that brought energy to the process. We also saw that it was a local government election, but being fought nationally, because we saw the involvement of both the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. So that also brought with it some sort of energy, some revival of interest. And probably people were beginning to say, hey, maybe, this is something we should be looking at as a form of our level of governance that we should be supporting. For me, though, I was not very surprised at the results, bearing in mind what I just said about the national thrust that came to the process. Maybe just for Hanover, I was a little surprised that we really got 7 or all of those. Westmoreland did not surprise me because I thought new energy had been pumped into that parish with the injection of 2 new candidates from national fame. So what we put in is what we got out. For me, though, my negative is that the local government message was lost in all of that excitement. I did not hear much of that narrative on the campaign trail. The argument was about something else. And so for me, that was disappointing because we're still left with the fact that many people are asking the question, do we need a local government? And it is still an unanswered question. So there's a lot that we will have to do going forward. And you have intimated that proper education should go along with getting the interest of other people, and especially the younger people who really do not get themselves involved in this sort of process, to get them to understand why it is necessary for them to become a part of the whole process. So that for me was one of the downsides. Going forward, I think that, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but we as politicians who seek to represent people, I don't think it is necessary for there to be a law to deal with term limits. We ourselves should know and install for ourselves term limits, because and I know as a politician and having been out there, when it is time that you should go. Not only is it that you have done what you're supposed to do and you'll never complete or that you had hoped to, but you have given enough that you feel here is a chance for somebody else to take that baton and go forward. It's not a thing that you should feel that you should die in or to be brought to, let me say what, an exit that is less than desirable. You know where I'm going? Some of us want to hold on forever.
Yes.
And forever is never in this game. So we should not wait for people to impose term limits on us. We should know when it is time to go. But all in all, I think it was a fairly run election. I think the people have spoken as they have seen it. I think that people understand who they want to represent them. Yes, there are cases where influence comes in, an undue influence comes in by money. But by and large, the process worked, and I am happy. I am not unhappy with the outcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ramsey. As a former counsel, could you share with us the level of anxiety that that our representative would be going through since Monday, or even after, whilst they await the result of the voters?
Oh dear, I'm going to get very personal, and I hope the listenership does not
No,
mind.
we want you to get personal in terms of, you can never tell, maybe one or two of us on this platform might have an interest.
And while she contemplates to answer that question, we recognize that she's unable to open her camera due to bandwidth issues.
No, I'm telling you something. I recently had a motor vehicle accident. I was involved in a motor vehicle accident, and I've had some after effect, really. It has aggravated the situation I had prior to all of this. So I was not able to be on the campaign trail per se, but I was kept up to date by people being able to involve me. Technology is so good. On the morning of the elections, as much as I've been in this thing for so long, I do get very nervous, extremely nervous. And before the polls opened, I slept very little the night before. My son was with me, and the phone rang at about 20 to 6. And the person on the other line said to me, "We're having difficulty at one of the polling stations because the worker who was assigned there, she was being told she couldn't work in that particular zone by, I think it's probably the officers inside the polling station." So I said, "What?" Well, it didn't take me very long. I jumped out of my bed and I said to my son, "Whatever you do, we have to get to that polling station before 10 minutes to 7, because that station opens at 7. And we managed that. I got there at 5 to 7 because I was prepared to be the indoor agent, because I wasn't going to let my agent and my party not be represented in the polling station when it opens. That is the level of commitment that most of us, and politicians are thought of as in the worst light, but nobody sees the other side of the coin and the commitment that most, and I'm telling you it's most, have to go through. We're there from the womb to the tomb. We're the first persons that people call when they have a dead person, a death at home, before the police or anybody else gets there. They're calling us. Night or day, we have to be there. And if you really want to serve people, this is what it is about. And that's why I've said that for me, counselors are the bedrock of democracy in our country. The counselors, and they've served long and hard before being recognized even by financial reward. So it was not for money that they were in it. Okay. So, people need to understand that when you give yourself in service, that we are not all good, we are not all perfect, we not all do the things that we promise to do, but we mean well. We mean well.
Thank you so much, Ramsey. Go ahead.
Very good summary, I would want to say, Madam Anne-Marie. Would you agree? Wouldn't you agree? That's a good summary from someone who has been there in terms of looking at what has taken place.
Indeed, indeed. And we appreciate the openness of Miss Ramsey and her sharing with us the anxiety and the positive and the realities that, as she indicates, the majority want to do good, they want to serve. They're the bedrock of the political framework, indeed, and the commitment and sacrifice that they make to ensure that the process is followed through. We are indeed grateful to our councils, regardless of the party, in the respective divisions, all 228 divisions across Jamaica.
Yes.
We hope that in another day or two, all the councils will be able to take a break, at least for a few hours, to just recoup. It's been hectic.
It's hardly likely, because even those who are not yet been sworn in, people are now requesting, we want this done, we want that done, and they are still not legitimate councillors, but that's how it is.
But before you run off from here, though, Sister Brenda, where do we go from here? The election is almost over. In terms of the results being known fully, where do the municipalities go from here?
Well, certainly once the swearing in takes place and the councillors are now legitimized, I think each party would want to do their own post-mortem at that time, and then to sit and to plan the way forward, because certainly it can't be the same old, because the people are speaking loud and clear. They want to be more involved. They want a say in what is happening. And so that, for me, I think should be the focus. How do we get people more involved in the process to make them feel a part of it, that is not just once in every 4 or 5 or 6 years that you're needed, but we want to hear from you and be a part of that governance.
I wonder if I could ask a question just now.
Go ahead, Mr. Henry, please.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. And again, I would start by saying thank you for your particular service to this nation. You speak of a sense in which you felt that there was a base of young persons who were energized to participate, and yet the results suggest that we have less participation this year than the last time around. And the point you make, I think, is critical, of asking that question: what next? Should there be a context that is established that facilitates the way in which our public servants allow for interaction with the community, so that it doesn't become a next election situation? How do we provide an opportunity for ongoing participation for young people, for instance, who want to get involved in the process, who are concerned about nation building? What should our councillors be doing? What should our political parties be doing? What are those practical things that will keep the attention of the electorate, and particularly of young people who must add value to the nation?
Okay. First of all, as I'm saying, if you're not engaging the people, you will never get their attention. You can talk until the cows come home. If they do not feel a part of the process, if they do not see the results of becoming engaged, they won't pay you any mind. You need to get into the institutions. You need to get into the community meetings. You need to call the business sector, because we are talking about a vast majority of the middle and upper class who have just cut themselves off from the system, So most of whom you see out there going out to vote, making the decisions for everybody, are those who understand the system the least. And that's why we have a responsibility to educate them, since they are the ones who are interested in becoming a part of the system. We can't just use them. And so I'm saying there are avenues that can be utilized to engage people. Never fear of getting people involved. I think sometimes the process is that people do not want to divulge information. There's no secret about the people's business, you know. There is none, there should be none. We in the council at Manchester and many others used to have what we call our budget meetings. And we went into the 15 divisions to engage the people to say, this is the next budget cycle that is coming up. What are your issues that we can see how we can address them? We may not be able to do all, but we know that their concern is maybe road while we were thinking it was water. Because sometimes we want to think for the people. Let them tell us what it is that their issues are and how they see that they can prioritize it. And if we do that, there will be less dissatisfaction. If somebody comes in and says, my road not done, we say, but we agreed that this was the priority. These are the funds that are available. And therefore, we cannot address the issue at the time that you need it. Because if you tell people, they understand, they might grumble, but they will understand. And so I believe communication, engaging the people is very, very critical to the way forward.
I was going to ask Lady Bishop.
With that comment that you made, Miss Ramsey, I totally agree. Education and engaging, and there should be no secret. Our councils are public servants, and we demand, we spoke about it on Monday, there should be accountability and transparency. And with that said, we saw in the news where the People's National Party made a statement removing Dennis Meadows as the PNP's provisional candidate based on comments he made on a certain platform, which the leader of the opposition, Mark Golin, deemed as inappropriate for a candidate to be making such utterances. How important is integrity, accountability, and fairness, or the perception of being upright for councillors?
And let me first of all commend Mr. Golin for his decisive and swift action. We don't like leaders who speak through the two sides of their mouths. People want to know that what you say is what you mean. And if you are committed to being a leader with integrity, a leader that can be trusted, a leader who the people can rely on to do what is right, that is what we expect of our leaders. You say from the local government level, every level of governance needs to be open, honest, and with people of integrity. And for me, and I speak boldly, that is a problem with our government in Jamaica today.
And I absolutely agree with you.
There's no integrity. There's no openness. There's arrogance. You take it or leave it. No. And that is what is coming forward. People are now saying enough is enough. So be it at the parish council level or at the other level of governance, that must be paramount, must be critical. If you cannot trust your leaders, what are you going to do? Put them up there to make them bash up the country? We have a generation to come, you know, we are not the only ones here. Some people are satisfied because they are able to benefit from whatever goes on. But generally, corruption in this country has made us become, I don't know, almost a pariah of the world. This beautiful country. We need to do something about it. Each and every one, and I don't mean just one's party, both sides of the political fence must make that commitment to be honest and the people of integrity. That is what people expect of them, and that is what they should give.
And I would just like to add that I commend the minister or the leader of the opposition, Mr. Golin, when he said we're demanding higher standards of accountability. Jamaica will no longer tolerate weak, unprincipled leaders who say one thing but do another. Jamaicans deserve better, and I will give it to them. End of quote. So as you said, Ms. Ramsey, the leader of the opposition, acted swiftly in taking a decision publicly to separate the party from the actions of Mr. Meadows.
Yes, yes.
And we also saw on the other side, as it relates to the Jamaica Labour Party and their decision to, I don't know if it is dismissed or he resigned, Mr. Everald Warmington's resignation in terms of the social media videos that have been circulating and his comments. There's a statement coming from the Prime Minister that he has resigned. So as you said, there needs to be greater accountability, and both leaders, it is incumbent on them to ensure the persons that serve under their stewardship in the various constituencies and divisions are persons of the highest level of integrity.
It must start with me, you know. I can always talk about others, but there are many other things that need to be disclosed that are not being disclosed. So while we demand of others,
that is true.
Okay, while we demand of others, we must lead by example.
So true, so true.
Yes.
I believe Mr. Sheldon may have a question for you, Miss Brenda. I'll turn over to him. Mr. Hanson, go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, Madam Ramsey.
Good evening, Mr. Hanson. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you, and good to have you on our panel this evening. I hope this is the step in the right direction regarding our countries and taking accountability from our leaders. A question, you had made mention about this year local government election. We had a lot of young councillors. Going forward to our general election in another year or so from now, is it that we'll see more young persons being want to serve their country and putting themselves forward to run for their constituency? What do you think about that?
Well, it's for the leadership to engage these people, you know, because it shouldn't be that somebody wants to be at the last minute a shoo-in because nobody else wants it. People should be groomed along the way and to be found suitable and put in place early so that, they can be guided. Because as I spoke on the last time that I was here, there's too many side steering. People don't allow others to learn. Yes, they will make mistakes and all like that, but if they're put in the system early enough, then they can be guided. But some are just thrown in at the deep end, at the last minute, and they flounder. So yes, let us get them engaged at different levels of the organization and to try them, test them to see if they are worthy. And I'm sure many more young people will be putting themselves forward. Many more.
But to add to that question though, why maybe another before now, sorry.
Sir
5, 10 years ago.
While you're answering the question, Sir Hansen, would you do so with your camera open? Only Brenda, we can hold off tonight.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. My apologies,
Yes.
sir. My apologies.
Go right ahead.
Yes, madam. Why probably 5, 6 years ago we didn't have so much young person interested in becoming politician or councillors? What you think was probably the reason behind?
I don't think people were engaging them and to show them that they're a part of the process and a vital part of the process. This is their country. If they wish to live here and their children are going to live here, together we must build it. It can't be always that you're going to be living in your parents' house and they are going to be taking all the decisions and doing whatever it is and telling you what to do. You have your ideas as to how you want to see this country move forward. And you can't be on the sideline and criticizing. And when a government is elected and you're not satisfied, you shouldn't have any say because you are not part of the process. You got the opportunity to and you didn't. And so more people are now saying, hey, if I'm going to want to make Jamaica my home, I want to be a part of the process. It might not be that I want to be an elected representative, but in some way I can become so engaged that I can influence the process, that others will come on board.
Thank you very much for that. So I hope going forward in the future, as you had made mention, I don't think we as a nation are forward thinkers that much, where we are grooming the younger generation to take up the mantle after we have decided to give it up.
And that's why I had mentioned about people need to look at themselves and know that there should be term limits. It can't go on forever.
I agree, and that's what I was going to make. You had made mention about term limits, and persons should know when time is up.
Yes, when to hold and when to fold.
But we have not been seeing that over the years. So going forward, what you think you think that we should actually have term limits where you serve for 8 years or you serve for 6 years. Normally we have election every 4 years.
Yes.
Is it that we have a
every
term limit for every 5?
5 for the general and then local 4. Yes.
4.
Which went into almost 7. You understand?
So is it a case where if a councillor or MP is working, even though we might have a term limit, do we still get go ahead with the term limits?
There are 2 ways, and I might be seeing that saying one thing and saying another thing. But I mean, if a young person comes in, I do not think that 2 terms would be probably enough for him to really complete a good vision that he has had for the constituency. But when you reach 70 and 80 and not even a computer, you understand how to operate. I mean, what you're doing there really? Occupying a space and just saying that I'm the done in this thing. I don't know if it's term limit or age limit.
For me, Ms. Ramsey, we're gonna allow you to complete your question, your response in just a while. Let's just take the time signal.
No harm
and then after that, I'm going to exit.
An evil person.
Yes.
Is full of trouble. This is NRP Media and Radio. The time is 9 o'clock.
All right, it's 9 o'clock right here on NRP Radio. You're listening to us right here on the platform of the National Religious Partnership Media and Radio. We are broadcasting the post-mortem of the elections, the local government elections just held. The broadcast this evening comes to you courtesy of our friends at TG's Auto in Main Street in Spaldings.
and VW Investments, also in Spaldings and in Christiana in Manchester. We were hearing there from former Mayor of Mandeville, that is Mrs. Brenda Ramsey. You could complete your point and then we can do the wrap with you.
Yes, as I was saying, maybe I am thinking age limit rather than term limit because as I was saying,
Yes, that's what I was thinking too.
yes, age limit and term limits. But some people should even go before the age. Sorry. The people decide that at that time. The people will decide at that time. Okay.
All right, thank you very much for that. The host, the attorney at law, Anne-Marie Bishop, is here with us. We do have Mr. Sheldon Hansen, our co-host. We've got Sydney Henry also online, and we're joined by Mrs. Helene Davis White. Anne-Marie, talk to us about her credentials.
Good evening to all our listeners online on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you, Ms. Ramsey, for joining us. We wish you were able to stay longer, but we appreciate the time you have spent with us, and we know you have other engagement. Welcome, Ms. Helen Davis White. Ms. White is a political analyst, and we're happy that you're able to join us as we do our post-mortem election, post-election evaluation tonight on NRP radio and nrpmedia.ja. And we thank all our sponsors for assisting and sponsoring tonight's program. And of course, I thank Mr. Hansen and Mr. Sydney Henry for joining and participating as my co-host tonight. Miss Helen Davis White, give us your take on the election results so far. We understand from Mr. Brown, who had joined us earlier, that they have counted 226 out of 228 divisions. And the results that he gave us, he indicated that 115 divisions so far is for the PMP and 111 for the JLP. And in terms of parish council seats, the JLP have 7 and the PMP so far have 6. And there's a possibility of magisterial recount in respect of a division in St. Thomas and 1 in St. Catherine. However, of course, the results will be finalized and confirmed hopefully by tomorrow.
Welcome, Mrs. Helen Davis White.
Go ahead, Ms. White.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, and can we see you? Can we see you?
Good evening.
Good evening, Mrs. White.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that I can't turn on my camera at this point in time. I got home not too long ago.
Okay, I understand.
But in terms of the local government elections that were completed, well, certainly the voting was completed on Monday. I think I have a couple of concerns, and some of these concerns have been around for quite a time. And one is the obvious fact that the majority of Jamaicans seem to have opted out of the democratic process, certainly in respect of both general and local government elections, because if one recalls the last general elections, although it was held in the middle of COVID, we had less than 40% of the electorate turning out to vote. And for local government elections, certainly for the last 20 or so years, we have had very low voter turnout. And it says to me that, people are opting out of the process for one reason or another. I think these current elections, the pollsters seem to have been very correct, because they did, certainly the Don Anderson poll did indicate that it was going to be a neck-and-neck race. And it has certainly proven to be such a race in most of the divisions across the island, where we have had seats being won by under 50 votes, one vote making a difference in terms of whether one party gets the council or the other party gets the council. So it is evident that it is a very close election. And it has played itself out as the pollsters had actually indicated to us. In terms of why it is that people have opted out of the process, I have found that for many, particularly younger persons, they have come away with a view that it's the same whichever party you elect. And some of them would have told you that they have experienced it because they may have in one election decided that they would give a particular party their vote and expecting that there would be a difference. But the truth is, in the world in which we live now, you don't have as much polarization, certainly in terms of philosophy, as we once had. So in the situation in Jamaica, once upon a time, there were clear choices. So if you voted for one party, you would expect certain kinds of policies, and similarly with another party. Now we are seeing that, there's not that very wide divide in terms of policy options. So then persons begin to ask themselves, does it really matter? Does my vote really matter? And so as a result of which, you speak with a lot of young persons and they will say to you that they don't really think their vote matters that much. I believe also that a part of what may be driving this kind of feeling also is the fact that many young persons don't understand the democratic process. They don't understand the system of governance that we have. And because this is my pet peeve now, they have stopped teaching civics in schools. So a lot of young persons have grown up, and I have had to be interacting even with young people in my own family and have to be indicating to them what is local government about, why you should actually want to be part of the process and so on. And I think we really have to be getting back to the drawing board in terms of looking at how we prepare our young persons to be able to participate in the democratic process, because if we don't, we will have even fewer and fewer persons, and what we will see eventually is a situation where it's a smaller and smaller minority of the electorate that is making decisions for the entire country. And I think that is of concern, and that is something that we need to be able to tackle.
Thank you so much for your comments thus far, Ms. White. We appreciate it. You have raised some valid points indeed. I know that Mr. Henry was nodding his head in agreement, and therefore I will hand over to him to ask his questions that seem to be, about to burst out of his mouth. So go ahead, Mr. Henry.
Yeah, good evening, Mrs. White. I wonder if we shouldn't be acknowledging and perhaps accepting that most of our politicians really prefer the status quo. We don't want this to change. And for as long as we are able to maintain it, is there the possibility of a shift of power, not only because we are able to exercise our democratic right to vote, but a shift of power from the politician to the people, beyond the vote? Is there an opportunity? Is there a doorway? Is there a place at which the people are able to leverage not just public opinion, but response to the need for accountability, fair play, justice, servants of the people actually serving as they ought to serve? Is there a space or a way? Do we legislate responsible behavior? We were talking earlier about, should you decide to cash in your chips at a certain age, or should we have term limits? But should we legislate some kind of responsible behavior so that that there's a shift, in the power between politician and people, so that people might be encouraged because they feel that we now have a greater, not just a say, but we are able to influence the direction in which action is taken in the interest of people.
Well, I certainly think we need to be able to, as certainly even civil society groups, need to be able to engage, because I don't think we should depend on the politicians to do that engaging. They need to be placed under some pressure to be able to do that. But as I indicated, part of the difficulty, even in the trade union movement, I have found the problems because we have more and more difficulty getting our members to want to offer themselves for positions to represent their particular group and so on. Because what I have found is that in the way in which our young people are, I don't know if it's so much socialized, but certainly in the way in which they operate, they have become very individualistic. And because they're individualistic, the answer for them is not really about getting together necessarily. And I think a part of that has to do with the fact that the way they deal with each other now is through some medium or the other in social media. And when you operate in that space, you do not have, I don't believe, that's my own belief, you don't have the same kind of interaction as if you're having personal interaction. And we saw some of it coming out in the pandemic and how our students suffered as a result of the fact that they were not being able to get that interaction. Also, even in terms of how they play, children don't get together and cooperate with each other to play games anymore, because you are doing your own little thing on your device and another one is yes. And sometimes they do make the connections to be able to compete with each other. But I think part of what we are seeing is the fact that, the usual socializing mechanisms are not operating to be able to deliver a set of young persons who recognize and even want to be able to socialize with each other face to face. So I think that is something that we have to be able to look at. How do we balance? Because yes, the technology is important, but how do we balance the use of technology as against the usual socializing forces that we have out there? Many persons will tell you, certainly in my time, youth clubs were a big thing. And young people would join youth clubs and want to participate. Because they were members of youth clubs, you would be able to have that kind of interaction where you are preparing them for the wider world and how they are able to cooperate and collaborate with persons to be able to get results. A lot of that is missed now as well. And so I think we have to do a lot of work as even members of civil society to be able to change that shift. And yes, I believe that there has to be in Jamaica a shift such that politicians recognize that the electorate who put them in power are the ones that they actually should be accountable to. Because a lot of politicians, when you hear them talk, it is really about them. And even the statement made by Minister Warmington is a demonstration of that, because when you can look at the state resources and you call them my money, then that tells you how many of our politicians think. He was probably one who was unwise enough to voice it, but I know that there are several of them who really think like that. But for us to get that shift, we have to start, I think, with our very young, and be able to culturalize them into in such a way that they recognize the importance of their involvement in the process. It may not necessarily be the party political process, but even just building on their involvement in activities at school and so on. So that prepares them, and they recognize as well the importance. So if it is key, club, whatever it is, that you are able to sort of use that as a means of preparing them for what life is really about. Because if you are involved in a lot of these activities in schools and so on, you know, they almost mirror the political process. And so what we need to be able to do, I think, is to build on that so that people understand and accept that when they vote for a political party or a particular, put a particular person in office, that party, that person is accountable to them. And I would just want to point to the current local governance process. And you notice I use the word governance as against government. And that was done when the reform process that was led first by Professor Nettleford and then carried through by Professor Neville Duncan. And in the consultations that were held with people in every parish, we felt that what was more important was for persons to understand and accept their role in local governance, not local government, but governance in terms of what is in place to ensure that whatever happens at the local level, that the persons who are closest to where the services are delivered have an input in decision making. And because of that, the current act calls for the involvement at the table of various community groups, such as your parish development committees, your community development committees. I forget, I think there were 3 groupings. And through them, you would get the involvement of your various citizens associations and so on. And it was not just about the councils or the municipal corporations telling them what they are going to be doing, but that they should be part of the process of deciding what happens in terms of the delivery of the various services in any parish or municipality. And I think that was a good start, but it was not carried through. After the 3 laws were passed, we went back to, you know, exactly what was there before. And I think if the government, whether this government or any new government, when general elections are called, if they actually allow the system that was developed and enshrined in law, arising out of the local government reform processes, they allow that system to operate, I think more and more persons will want to come back into the system, because then they will begin to see that, you know, their involvement actually matters, because they will know be part of that decision-making process, and the councils and the councils will have to account to them for whatever work is done and so on. And I think that is very important. I know a lot of our political representatives don't like that because they feel that they are the ones that have been elected. So, we shouldn't allow persons who have not been elected by the population to become part of that process. So I think if we get to that stage where we are able to actually put into effect some of what was agreed and actually passed into law in the current local government organization, I think that would start the process of persons being able to recognize that their involvement matters and that it can actually change what happens in their locale, and that will go further to not only their particular locale, but to the country as a whole.
Okay. Good evening, Madam White. Do you believe enough been done regarding public education to our youths, for them to understand really what local government is and what it represents?
I don't think there's been any, as a matter of fact, from my recollection, the only time I can recall, and I can be wrong about this public education, is since the elections were called, and you got some ads coming out from the EOG and so on, advising through the various skits and so on what local government was really about. And the truth is, because we are at almost a fledgling state now, the work has to be done. And I believe, as I said before, a big part of that process must be about teaching civics in schools. Because if you teach it in schools from as early an age as possible, and you'd have to break it down, then the young persons would be able to understand because they would now know this process. And if twinned with that, you have things actually being implemented under the new laws that will show that it's not just about talk, that persons are involved and they are helping to decide as to what is the best policy or approach in any municipality, then I think we will start that process. It may be something that probably takes a generation to change, but we have to start somewhere, because if we don't, as I said, what is happening now is fewer and fewer persons are, and when it comes to the national level, it becomes even more problematic in terms of our general elections and how many persons really are participating. And as I think the point was made before, that it may very well be that our politicians don't mind, because if it is them and their group and crew that are making those decisions because of how our electoral system is designed and operates, where it's first past the post, regardless of the number of persons that vote. So there is always a winner, and many of them don't mind if it is a minority, and also for many of them, since it's a minority that vote for them, they feel that their only obligation is to those who vote for them, and it sets up a scenario that can get even worse than where we are today. So I think certainly civil society groups have to become part of that trust. We cannot wait on the politicians. I would bet you that if it were not for an outcry from various groups about the statements of the two politicians, one on either side, there would have been no action. Yeah. So it tells us.
Agreed.
They tells us that we can accomplish things. So it's not something that we have to sit down and just accept. And I think I am certainly a child of the 70s. And yes, we had some very difficult times in Jamaica in the 70s. But as a young person growing up, you took positions on things. You wanted to be part of the process. And I think we need to get back to that stage of persons actually wanting to be part of the process. And that can only come if we as citizens decide that, we are not going to leave this just to the political parties. We are going to make some demands and be willing to assist as well. But Jamaica cannot continue as it has been for the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, so right about that. But a question though, outside of local government election and nationally, how can we really engage the citizens for them to know what really these both general and local government elections and their purposes though?
I think the various groupings. So you have the church as an important grouping that actually can provides a vehicle for interaction. So we have to look at the various groupings that exist. And I think not each grouping doing its thing on its own, but broader civil society. So you have the various groupings, but I think we need to all come together in a fashion that allows us to be able to have those discussions and be able to influence our young people. I will tell you that our government likes to tell us about the economic miracles that have happened. But if you really look at how we have been able to get to where we are, moving from, as a lot of persons described it, in 2012, 2015, when we had that IMF program, the description at the time was that we were at the edge of an abyss. And a lot of persons in the international community were really wondering, when would Jamaica actually implode? And the main reason why we did not implode, as I know I have colleagues in the trade union movement in Europe, in Greece, where Greece had a similar situation like Jamaica, and at a point in time, it disintegrated totally, yeah? Why that did not happen in Jamaica is because the approach that was taken was that it was an all hands on deck approach. So we had persons from the various areas of the economy, as well as civil society, who came together and decided that we had to make some sacrifices for the good of Jamaica. But in making those sacrifices, we decided that we needed to hold the government's feet to the fire. And so as a result of which, we established EPOC, but that was there to ensure that whatever gains were made were not frittered away, but that, the economy, we would begin to see an improvement in our economic fortune. And importantly, a lot of work was done to ensure that when there was a change of government in 2016, that the new government basically continued those policies. So when we speak of this economic miracle, we have been able to get there really because the major groups that represent people in Jamaica were brought on board or recognized the importance of each of us being part of a process to, quote unquote, rescue Jamaica. And so I think, when you look at that, you have a template that you can use to be able to mobilize Jamaicans. And I believe that if we utilize that template, we can get Jamaicans on board, and what we have to be able to convince Jamaicans. The problem that we have now may not be totally economic. Yes, there are persons who are not benefiting from this economic miracle, which is a concern that is out there. But at the same time, we have social issues that we need to be able to deal with. And this all hands on deck approach is the only approach I certainly believe. I mean, we call it social dialogue. It is the only approach that can provide the kind of lasting improvement and benefit to our citizens, to ensure that Jamaica is able to realize, the usual, the 2030 vision. I think they're going to have to call it won't be 2030 again, for sure. But we have a vision for the country that we want to live in. And as long as you're going to be here, I have nowhere going. So I need to make sure that I'm able to retire in a country that I'm able to survive, and that in terms of order, there is order and discipline and so on. But it will take all of us coming together. So if our politicians are not willing, so we can certainly, by amassing our strength, be able to say to them, this is what the vast majority of Jamaica wants. So you need to be able to come with us to for us to be able to have that gentler, more disciplined Jamaica that we would want to, raise our children and work and retire.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
Leon Nash here, jumping into the discussion, Mrs. Helen Davis' wife. So how do you view this election as it relates to, was the term that I use, Sir Henry? Is not a mandate? What is it on the government? What's the term? It's not mandate, is the word I'm searching for.
Well, I think certainly the people were able to express themselves as to the achievements of the government and whether or not they would want to continue on this path. The truth is that these elections came at a time, when we are just about a year out from the next general elections. And it was evident that both political parties used it as an opportunity to be able to, almost be able to get the pulse of what it is that our Jamaicans want. So we can certainly, by amassing our strength, be able to say to them, this is what.
Go ahead,
majority of Jamaica
Madam Host.
You will need to be able to come with us.
We're having a feedback from you, Desmond.
All right.
Okay, then, Madam White. So we based on what you have seen with the closeness of this election, what do you believe is next, or what was a takeaway for you, and what surprised you about this election?
I don't know if there were any surprises as such for me. In terms of, the vote in certain constituencies or divisions. The one that actually did surprise me was the Christiana division, because that is the territory of the great Manayard, and over the years he has held on tightly there. So what it is saying to me is that certainly in that constituency there's a likelihood that there may be a change of the member of parliament if the GLP is not able to do some work there that will be able to restore their fortunes. I think, though, I believe that the JLP may have been surprised. I think they may have underestimated the ability of Mark Golding to be able to unify and really put up a good showing in the elections. The JLP came into the space late because they didn't. My own belief is that they didn't think they needed to do much work, and so they ended up, although they were the party in power that were going to be calling the elections, they ended up in a situation where they were almost caught flat-footed. But I think the showing of Mark Golding in terms of his ability to unify the party and be able to deliver such a close result in the local government elections, I believe that the PNP believes that this augurs well for their performance in the general elections. But I would caution them that it can be something where they sit too long on their laurels, because truth is it's a close election and each of them is saying that they have won. But if they want to take home the bacon in the general elections, they have to hit the ground running and try to keep that momentum going into the general elections. So I didn't expect a large voter turnout. This was where I disagreed, although the pollsters can only present based on the results of their surveys. I did not believe that you would see anything close to 40% as was projected by the pollsters in terms of the turnout in the local government elections. Yes, it was higher than the last local government elections, but I think a lot of that had to do with the campaigning that was really around national issues and around as it was treated as if it was a general election, and so they were able to bring out more people than came out in the last local government elections. But I don't think there have been many surprises in terms of the results of the elections. I think what will have to happen is that both parties, if they want to see themselves back in power, they will have to be doing work on the ground to be able to get people to come out. And I think the problem that there may be for the ruling party is that they are in power. So yes, they have state resources to be able to deliver, but they are going to be under pressure from persons to say, what have you done lately? And therefore, that is something that they will have to be interacting with not only their people. I think they will have to be able to bring others on board to support them to be able to be victorious in the general elections. So I haven't identified many surprises at all in these elections. I am really looking at what is next and how the parties are going to be treating the next year or so. I'm almost positive the JLP won't call the general elections early. They will want it as far down the road as possible because they would want to ensure that they get some time to reorganize and put themselves in a better position. So I think we will see the electioneering starting now and not when the date for the general elections are announced, but the electioneering is already underway in terms of the next general elections.
Thank you so much, Ms. White. We're going to take a short break and then come back and ask you just a few more questions and then we'll wrap up. Go ahead, Mr. Nash.
J-Win Pharmacy Limited, Samford Plaza in Spalding, Clarendon, the leading pharmacy in the area that specializes in pharmaceuticals, general over-the-counter items and cosmetics. They stock various self-care items and household items. Contact them at 876-956-0930 or 876-371-6781. Here to provide just what you need.
Hepburn's Glass Supplies is the latest trend-setting supplier of glass and mirrors in the industry. We specialize in tinted and clear glasses, as well as mirrors for all your windows, doors, and closets at very competitive prices. To maximize your shopping experience, we stock 316 and 1/8 mirror thickness and 316 and quarter thickness in our entire stock of float glasses. We have in stock gloves, cutters, and suction cups at unbeatable prices. Our customer service is second to none, with same-day cutting for your specific measurements. Visit our office at 13 Chisholm Avenue, Kingston 13. Call us at 908-0962 or email hepburn.glass@gmail.com. Hepburn's Glass, quality service is our priority.
All right, back to the team.
Thank you so much. Welcome back to NRP Media, NRP Radio, and to all our listeners on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. Our team members are Sheldon Hanson, Mr. Sidney Henry, and I am your host, Anne-Marie Bishop. We have on set Miss Helen Davis White, political analyst, and she shared with us her take on the local government election and the need for more education and the teaching of civic in our school. The earlier, the better. Miss White, kindly give us your closing thoughts on the way forward with the upcoming. I'll say upcoming because we do not know when it will be called by the Prime Minister, but the way forward as we look forward to the general election. Thank you. Whilst Miss White? We seem to have lost Miss White, but go ahead, Mr. Hanson, with your... Miss White, you're muted. Perhaps Miss White is having some technical challenges at this time, but we'll invite Mr. Sidney Henry to share with us his closing thoughts on election 2024, local government election. Go ahead, Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry, you're also muted. Kind of unmute your mic.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank the team for the opportunity to have shared as we did tonight.
Okay,
I think
great.
much of what we had a chance to explore can still be interrogated much further in other fora, and certainly on this program. There is so much that needs to be engaged in terms of facilitating the voice of young people who need to be a part of the process, young people who have been a part of the process, and as well as how it is that we will try to create a balance of power between people and politicians. How do we facilitate active participation of not just a generation of citizens who have always been a part of the process, but for those who are going to come into the process, not as politicians, but as participants, as citizens in a system that should serve them and provide opportunities for them to add value to their own lives and to the country. I think we're doing just that tonight in this discussion. We're facilitating the exposure and the conversation that must be had, and I am privileged to be a part of it, and I'm grateful for the experience that has been shared, and certainly what has been given to us as an opportunity to build on as we move forward with this discussion. Lady Bishop.
And I'm back with you now.
Yes.
I wasn't connected before.
Welcome back, Miss White. We were doing our closing, and we'd like you to share with us I think Mr. Henry. Okay, good. With us the way forward as the country anticipate the general election. But before you do so, on Monday, Mr. Hunt and I went through the 4 strategic goals of Vision 2030. And that's a great minds think alike. I was about to ask you a question when you mentioned that it may not be Vision 2030, it may be pushback. But how important is local governance at the local government level? How important is it to shaping or helping us as a country, as a people, to realize Vision 2030?
Well, some of the issues and that are addressed in the Vision 2030 are things that if you look at them, you have to almost segment them as to where in the process they'll be able to be dealt with. But what you'll find is that, you have some that can be dealt with at the local level and others that will be dealt with at the central government level in terms of policy. For even something like security of the various communities, what is envisioned is that it will not be a situation of persons just calling for a particular policy, but what will have to happen is that you will have to adopt an approach in terms of citizen security that will recognize the importance of the citizen at the local level and them being able to become involved in that process. And it's not something of persons looking to others, whether from outside or higher up the ladder, to be able to deliver on that mandate of securing the citizen, but recognizing that that there is a role for the citizen at the local level. So that's one example of what it is that you would want in a well, certainly what Vision 2030 portrays, and quite a bit of it recognizes that some of it has to be done at that local level. If my memory serves me right, there were items that were identified to be things that would have to be actioned at the local level. And in order to do that, you have to strengthen the mechanisms in the parishes for them to be able to deliver at that level. And so I think local government and governance at that level is going to be very important for the ability for us to be able to deliver on the 2030 vision, or whichever year we may be looking down the road to be able to realize that vision. But I don't believe it is impossible. I think we did make a good start when we tried to, set out this vision. And if I recall, there were consultations with various groups and so on in setting out this policy. I think what will have to be done is to review it and see where we are in terms of the achievement of the various goals, and for us to be able to develop a plan as to how we are going to move from where we are now to actually achieving it. Some of the things that are happening in our country in terms of our economy and so on will, I think, have to be revised in order for us to be able to realize that vision, but I don't think it is impossible. So I think that is where we would have to be to. So I think that is where.
Question, Madam White.
Madam Bishop mentioned about the 20.
You know, we would have to be total.
Madam,
All right. Well, just reminding us that we need to keep our mics closed so that when one is speaking that we do not get the feedback. So could we try that, please? Go ahead, Mr. Hanson, is that you?
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Question, Madam White. The fact that Madam Bishop mentioned about 2030 vision, and also you had made mention briefly about it before, it could possible that the next year or so from now, we may have a change in government. And 4 or 5 years from that is really 2030. Do you believe that the timing, if we have changing government, the time will be short for them to achieve probably 70 to 90% of what we need to achieve for 2030?
And we lost her again. Not certain. Let me just check here, and we will fill this particular gap. Okay, having some challenges on that side, not getting Madam Ramsey at all. But White. Okay, she's still there.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, Mrs. Cylinder. She's still there.
Okay. Yes, I don't believe that the 2030 vision plan should necessarily be affected by a change of government. Recognizing that this plan was developed, I think somewhere around, it was the early 2000s, yeah? And we did have change of governments, and the plan basically remained intact. What I think will have to be done by any incoming administration is to be able to look at where we are in terms of achieving the goals. I know that right across the world, even in terms of achieving goals that were set in relation to climate change and so on, they have had to be adjusted because of what has happened in terms of the effect of the pandemic on world economies and so on. So as with any good plan, you have to build into it the monitoring capabilities. And once you do that monitoring, you will be able to look at it and decide what you have actually accomplished and what needs to be done in terms of accomplishing those other areas. And so I believe that you would find a situation where you may have to extend it beyond 2030. Based on my knowledge of where we are, in terms of the goals in that 2030 vision, I don't believe that we'll be able to achieve most of them by 2030. We are still in the throes of trying to implement it, but changes have had to be made, and I believe more changes will be made in terms of our ability to achieve. I don't think it is necessarily going to be about changes in the government, in the administration. It more has to do with the resources and how we are able to use those resources to be able to accomplish those goals.
Thank you very much. Madam Bishop, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. White, for your comments and your input. And certainly, we would want to continue this discussion at some point in the future. So I hope you will make yourself available when an invite is extended to you. We really appreciate your input and your knowledge, the knowledge you have shared with us. I realize that Mr. Nash has on screen the final vote tallies. Go ahead, Mr. Nash. Mr. Nash, we're not hearing you.
Okay, here we go. Right. So just to remind our listeners that this is the NRP radio. We are doing the local government post-mortem. We're having this discussion. And with us tonight, we do have our guest, our host of this particular session, and none other than Attorney at Law Anne-Marie Bishop. We do have Mrs. Helene Davis White, who is the head of the JCTU. Are we still correct on that, Mrs. Helene Davis White?
No. I gave that up last October.
All
So
right.
I'm General Secretary of JALGO.
Of JALGO, all right.
Yes.
Jamaica Association of Local Government.
Officers, yes.
All right. Thank you so much for that additional information. We do have the co-host of this session, Sheldon Hansen, and Mr. Sidney Henry are another of our guests. He's not columnist here now, but somebody who is providing some analysis of what's taking place. Of course, my name is Leon Nash. On screen with us this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is the final vote tallies complete for 226 electoral divisions. The electoral office says that the ballots for these 226 electoral divisions have now been counted, bringing the number of parishes where the final count is complete to 11. So 11 parishes complete. And if my maths and my understanding is, we do have 14 parishes. So there are 3 that are still outstanding at this point. The electoral division of Dallas in St. Andrew, and someone could probably pull that up to see where Dallas is and whose constituency that is in. Well, it's Dallas in St. Andrew, East Rural St. Andrew, there it is. And Cornwall Mountain in Westland Central, all right, are being counted. All right, it says that the nine of the 12 electoral divisions for the mayoral contest in the municipality of Portmore have been counted as 9 of 12. 8 were won by the People's National Party candidate and 1 by the candidate from the Jamaica Labour Party. The table below, as they have provided here, I'll read that out quickly. We've got 2 minutes before we go to 10 o'clock. The parish, the number of electoral divisions won by the JLP will come up first. The number of electoral divisions won by the PNP up second, and the total number of electoral divisions, as we have on screen, will come up at the end. So St. Thomas, 6 for the JLP, 4 for the PNP, a total of 10 total in St. Thomas. Portland, 7 for the JLP, 2 for the PNP, making that 9 in total of the number of electoral divisions that have been counted in Portland. St. Mary, 6 for the JLP, 7 for the PNP, making that 13. St. Anne, 11, 5 for the PNP, making that 16 counted. Trelawney, 6 for the JLP, 3 for the PNP, making that 9. St. James, 11 to 6 and 17. And Hanover, number of seats, number of divisions won by the JLP, 0 and 7 for the PNP. And the total, meaning that that's the number in Hanover, that there's no other numbers to be added to that. So that's 7 total, and the PNP took all 7. Westmoreland, in Westmoreland, that is still outstanding. St. Elizabeth, 9 won by the JLP, 6 for the PNP, making that 15. And we pause for the time signal and come right back to you right here on NRP Radio.
Psalm 34 verse 18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those whose spirits have been crushed." This is NRP Media and Radio. The time is 10 o'clock.
All right, so we are at 10 o'clock in the nighttime, and we were just running down the parish and the number of divisions won by the JLP versus the PNP, and giving you the total at the end. So we were at St. Elizabeth, and we're telling you that 9 of the divisions were won in St. Elizabeth by the Jamaica Labour Party and 6 by the PNP, and giving a total of 15 seats in total for St. Elizabeth. In Manchester, 3 were won by the Jamaica Labour Party, 3 were won by the Jamaica Labour Party, and 12 by the People's National Party. And that gives the total there. Let me just move my screen here a little bit. All right. In Manchester to 15. So 15 electoral divisions in total. 6 for the 12 for the PNP and 3 for the Jamaica Labour Party. In Clarendon, it's a 12-10 margin. 12 won by the Jamaica Labour Party and 10 by the PNP, making that 22 divisions in the parish of Clarendon. Over in St. Catherine, 19 won by the JLP, 22 by the PNP so far, and making that 41 seats. In the Kingston and St. Andrew municipality, that is outstanding. So outstanding is Westmoreland, outstanding Kingston and St. Andrew, and I think some other pockets that are still being counted at this time. So that's the latest information supplied to us by the Electoral Office of Jamaica. That's coming to us at just a few minutes ago. That was at 8:59. That was sent out to us from the Electoral Office. Back to you, Madam Anne-Marie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nash. And let me say thanks to my co-host, Mr. Sheldon Hanso, and to Mr. Sidney Henry for joining us this evening. It's been a very productive, interesting session as we look at the local government election evaluation, the results, and maybe we will continue the discussion next week when all the results are in. Thank you, Mr. Nash, and thanks to all the guests who joined us earlier. We had Ms. Brenda Ramsey, former mayor of Mandeville, the director of elections. He joined us and shared with us some update as to the election result. We have on set now Ms. Helen Davis White, political analyst, and we thank you so much for joining us, Ms. White. It's been very informative and interesting. And thanks to all our listeners on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. You're tuned into NRP Radio, nrpmediaja.com. Over to you, Mr. Nash, and I am Anne-Marie Bishop. Thank you.
Thank you too, and thank you for the entire team for really pushing hard since Monday. Is it Monday we had the election? I heard you mention Tuesday. Was it not on Monday the election was? What do you say, Mr. Henry? Yes, I think the 26th. Right. The 26th, right?
Yes, 26th.
The 26th, that was Monday.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. So yes, the election was on the 26th of February, and the team was with us during the course of the night to analyze, and we're grateful that you are here. And as we said before, the team that starts with us will stay with us, right? Mr. Hansen, I see his face lighting up a little bit there, as an indication that yes, you are correct on that. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we look forward, We look forward. All right, so let me do the last rites for the studio.
VW Investments Company Limited, Christiana Main Street, Spaldings, Clarendon. Quick exchange, no hassle, best rates. Call them at 876-964-0604 or 876-964-9370.
That was VW Investments. Let's now hear from Macy. All right. That's not Macy, but J-Win Pharmacy. All right. And coming up shortly on this station will be the program coming. We're joining the Gospel Expression Radio over there in New York, right after we do this last commercial break, and we really get out of here with our theme, as we have been working hard on since evening. Let's go.
J-Win Pharmacy Limited, Samford Plaza in Spalding, Clarendon, the leading pharmacy in the area that specializes in pharmaceuticals, general over-the-counter items and cosmetics. They stock various self-care items and household items. Contact them at 876-956-0930 or 876-371-6781. Here to provide just what you need.
All right, so this is where we wrap, and we thank you one more time for joining us online on NRP Media JA on YouTube and Facebook, on our radio platform at nrpmediaja.com. My name is Leon Nash, the CEO and founder of the NRP Media platform. We thank you so much, Madam Anne-Marie Bishop and the team. We look forward to the next time around. God bless you and take care.